Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursdays and sometimes Fridays, to our literary series. And tonight, my guest is MP Carver. And let me tell you a little bit about MP. Um, right about now, this should about do it. So this is her chapbook, and what we really need to look at is her bio. So this is MP's bio. If you want to know more about MP Carver, I won't go over the whole web page, but it's mpcarver, no periods.com. MP Carver is a poet and visual artist from Salem, Mass. She's the director of the Massachusetts Poetry Festival, micro-founder of Molecule, a tiny lit mag, and teaches creative and digital writing at Salem State University. Her work has been published or is forthcoming in Mantis, Jubilat, and Love's Executive Order, among others. She's received funding from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and in 2022, her poem You and God and I was awarded the New England Poetry Club's E. E. Cummings Prize. Her chapbook, Selachipmorpha, was published by Incessant Pipe in 2015. So with that, I'm going to turn it on over to MP and welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, Tim. Thank you. And actually, this is a good lesson in the danger of not keeping one's website up to date. I'm also just add to that. I've got a chapbook coming out from Lilly at the end of this year called Hard Up, which I'm excited about. So I might read some of the poems from that tonight. I'm just going to set my timer here. Okay. All right. Yeah, but again, thank you everybody so much for coming. Thank you, Tim, for having me. And I'm going to start with a poem called Meeting a Friend to Write at the Starbucks. And there's a mention of a browser game on here called Mr. Mine. Probably many people here have not played Mr. Mine, but just imagine that it is a huge online time waster. Meeting a friend to write at the Starbucks. It's Sunday morning, and instead of writing, I'm on Firefox playing Mr. Mine. The Lord worked hard, then rested on Sunday. I rest every day, so have no poems, though I'm already at a depth of 1,046 kilometers in this digital world. In fact, I have dug right through the earth and moved on to the moon. All it takes is a Google search to learn the actual diameter of the Earth is 12,742 kilometers. Mr. Mine's math may be suspect, but real-world mankind has only made it 12 kilometers deep, so I think I have something to be proud of. Humans reached the moon the lazy way. Anyone can travel the atmosphere. The people milling around me at this cafe while I dig deeper but fail to write my poems are expert air travelers 24/7, even on Sundays. Yet here I sit moving through stone. God said to the Israelites on day 1,795,204, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I'm fine with what heart and flesh I've got. I'm cutting through, barely needing words. What a world we live in, and all of it mine. And this next poem was my attempt at some kind of math poem. So it's called Is This It? Is this it? Yes. Therefore, it equals this. This plus this equals it plus it. This times this equals it times it. And this over it equals it over this. Moreover, this to the it equals it to the this. The square root of this equals the square root of it. Log this of it equals log it of this. The integral from this to it, f of this, equals the integral from it to this, f of it. And furthermore, this minus it equals 0. 0 equals nothing. 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 This is it. Let's see. And This is a poem that was published in the Lilly Poetry Review called Invasion. Invasion. How come the aliens are always looking for us? Where are the stories about the ones who find us by chance, don't know what to do or say? How will they figure our poems? What will they think about our sprawling cultures, our medical advancements, our failures? To my uncle with Alzheimer's, everyone's an alien now. He's afraid of the woman who cleans his room, of the aides who try and get him to eat and shower. It's just him and the cat. Or was it a son? Who left that baby all alone like that? And who are these people? Some unknown enemy with their exigent, uncanny language. And this poem was inspired by the poet Malcolm Miller. It's called The State of It. The train cuts across the marsh. The fence cuts across the forest. The bridge cuts across the river. Our stone, steel, and electric bones grow and grow. Industriously, we rib the planet. The rib cage protects the chest. The chest traps the heart. Our hearts beat and beat. We know that someday they won't. Still, we can't help but think that this, too, is something we can cut across. Okay. And actually, I'll read one. My friend Jack Jower is in the audience, and he always writes great poems with coyotes in them. So this was my attempt at such a poem. How to Enter the Trees. In the space between one oak and the next, in the birches, the coyotes are waiting. Coyotes, terrible, full of teeth and intent, end quotes and maelstroms. This is what it means to be in the woods, to be soft, poetic, full of speech and filaments. What is nature? The space my heart carves on the page as my skin crawls through the air. The birth of even so much as dread and the romantics. Poets all around, bark and abrasion, human eyes entering the space between the conifers, the maples, the pines. Talk from the open cavern of the sky. Swallow and pretend to know the names of things, to walk upright, to sing songs. Around us, the firs drop sharp tin needles in the flimsy, unlasting light. And then I'll end with this short one, and thanks to J.D. Scrimger, who put together an anthology 9x5. I'm not sure if he's here in the audience, but he was kind enough to publish this one. So I try to resist the bird as soul metaphor, but watching them there, soaring, scuffling over trash, chasing each other off lampposts in the gray dawn of the all-night Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, I'm moved despite myself. Thanks.
Wow, thank you, MP. And I am going to, there we go. I'm going to join you. So welcome again. And I'm going to we're going to have a little chat here. But let's we've got a lot of questions in the chat, but I'm going to start with you identify on your webpage as a visual artist. I noticed in your poetry almost has it goes with the mode of thinking everything has a system. So do you consider yourself a visual artist? Is your poetry visual, or is your poetry more systematic?
It's funny you say that. I am really weak at the visual in poetry. I think so. I don't think my poems do have a very strong like sense of image, and I have to sometimes sort of force myself to move towards image. Yeah, so, but I'm also a very bad visual artist, so it all makes sense.
So somebody who I always look at creative mind and non-creative mind, but I also look at writers being always able to improve. So if say you're a teacher and professor, you're working with a student that may or may not be creative, what sort of things can you do to make them more expressive, to expedite more work out of them as a poet?
Um, that's a good question. Well, I think the most important thing is reading poetry. I think the more you read, the more you see what can be done and maybe get comfortable making some of those moves and changes. And you can use prompts, of course, but I think the most important thing is once somebody has written something and you sit with them and you're looking at it, is to point out what they're doing well, because then in the next poem they're going to do that again and sort of do it even better. And I think you build up much better that way to sort of identify, I guess, the heart of what's going on for a student that you think might end up being something that really can take them someplace.
Now, do you suggest using prompts for students such as that, or you're also, I know you have a whole prompt group, so uh, tell me a little bit about how you do that and what you do with your prompts.
Now I use prompts constantly, and I've always told students to use prompts. Of course, I don't think you have to use a prompt, right? If you're somebody with inspiration, go for it. And that used to be me, right? Like when I was first writing poetry, I would just constantly be moved to write. But I think as I got older, I don't know, some of that dried up. And but I kept reading and I kept writing poetry, but you didn't sit down to write quite as much. And so when I switched to being like, why don't I just start using the prompts? All of a sudden, it was great to be writing a lot. So, and I think especially for those students who are nervous, prompts are great because, it just gives them a direction to go. So.
All right, I'm going to extrapolate a question out of some of Lindsay's questions. So what tools do you use to always improve and keep discipline to write each day? And how do you keep the passion to write?
Right. Well, the most important thing I think is to be involved in the poetry community. So I'm lucky enough to be in an area where we have a lot of physical events, but there's also a lot of online communities you can be a part of. And I think just staying in that world, you keep hearing exciting things, right? You want to write and be part of that with everybody else. Reading, of course, is the most important thing. And I think the kind of fastest way to I guess improve and kind of think about new things that you could do right from what you take in. So I'd say those two things. I'm worried I might have forgotten the second half of your question.
It has to do with how do you keep the passion to write flowing?
Yeah, I'll say too, right now I just joined and Jack Jower, who's here, is doing it too. And I think Liz Horowitz, something called, maybe other people too, something called the Stafford Challenge, which is a write a poem a day for 366 days. And so I just started that about a month ago, and that's been incredibly fruitful. But before that, I would occasionally embark on other challenges, write like 30, 30 for National Poetry Month, or write a poem a day for this week. And I think that's useful. I think when you get inspiration, it's such a gift. But I think if you only wait for inspiration, there'll be a lot of poems that you could have written that you didn't write, and they don't all work out, but some of them will. So
I can imagine writing a poem a day for 365 days. You're going to certain areas and subject matter that's outside of your comfort zone. What's the most uncomfortable poem you've written so far in the Stafford Challenge?
oh, in the Stafford Challenge in this short time. Okay. Well, I don't know if it was I wouldn't say it was uncomfortable, but the most unusual poem is I wrote a persona poem, and I almost never write persona poems. So that was strange. And I felt like it kind of worked out. I wouldn't say anything has made me particularly uncomfortable this go round. Though of course I've written uncomfortable poems in the past, but I will say I've had to write a lot of haikus at like 11:50 at night. So those are not gonna last.
Now, do you go back and revise during the day something that you might have written last night or the night before, or you wait for like 2025 and be like, this is the revision year?
No, I tend to revise stuff kind of close to the original writing. So I wish I could go back every day, but life gets so crazy, but I will go back and look through. And even getting poems ready for tonight, even though some of them are poems that have been around for a while, you still find yourself tweaking a little here, tweaking a little there.
Did you tweak any while you were reading tonight on the fly?
No, I do that, but these ones were kind of poems I've had for a long time, so they've mostly been edited. But there were other poems I had prepared just in case, and a couple of them went through some big some big changes. So it's probably better not to read them. So
We were getting a great visual through the reflection in the window behind you of you scrolling to find your poems, and you were quite adept at that.
good. I'm glad.
Liz has a question. Can you talk about how and why humor is so important in your poems, and also subtle irony, I guess, is included in that?
Yeah, yeah. I will say, I think to some extent, it's just the way it's partially just the way I think. So if I want to express something about the world, I think partially it just kind of comes out that way. There's not that much, even terrible things. There's not that much I think approach that seriously. So humor kind of gives me a sideways way to get at it. Um, and the other thing too is I think that humor is very disarming, right? And a lot of things that are difficult are also really absurd if you think about them, right? So much of our like lives are absurd, and um, so I guess that just comes out in the poetry, right? Because you're kind of trying to look at something in a big way. So
So someone on the, I sound like Larry King. Someone on the call would like to know, is there openings in the prompt group?
Oh, the prompt group is not a public group. It's like me and a friend who get together a couple days a week. But I highly, highly, highly encourage people to try it. So we just get together for a couple hours. We do the same day every week, and we trade off. So one week it's my turn to prompt. We give a prompt. We write 10 minutes, and then we both read what we write, even if it's usually terrible, right? Because you just wrote it. And yeah, we do that every week. And so every week you get 4 or 5 pieces of writing. And then if I'm lucky, one or two of them works out, and I've got a couple for the Stafford Challenge. But it really is it's kind of easy to do. It's both social and productive. So I definitely recommend um, getting one of those groups going if you can. So in some ways, I think it's easier to do it just a couple friends rather than a public group, because you can really trust. It's okay to really read something that like didn't work out, right? Because you're close to each other. So
Tell me a little bit more about that. Is it important when people are looking at your work or you're preparing a manuscript that you have trustworthy reader? And do you have that one or two people that you just would trust your poetry life with?
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. A lot of people, I think, or like close friends, people who I like and whose poetry I respect and whose opinion I respect. And no, you never take you never just kind of take everything somebody says like for true, but it's good to know like how everybody is seeing things. And always, people have great suggestions, and every now and again I'll say no, I want to do this or I want to do that. But you trust people, you trust those people to kind of take care with the words, right? So
Question I'll make more general is from Lindsay. Writing difficult things, does that help people heal?
I
Or have you felt healed from um, anything from your writing?
No, I will say no. One time, in one case, after I had a difficult time. My uncle passed away after a long battle from Alzheimer's. He was in a nursing home, but I was kind of his primary contact, and it was a difficult time. And after he died, it took me 3 years to write about it, and it was the most cathartic poem I've ever written. But I think for me, not as much, although I know that's for a lot of people, I think would have a different answer. I think it's just a strange thing about me that I don't tend to find
Tell,
it particularly cathartic.
tell us a little about your work at Mass Poetry. Like you are the big kahuna there, and maybe some advice for someone that wants to start maybe Tennessee poetry or Ohio
Oh,
poetry or
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I'm the director of the Massachusetts Poetry Festival, which we're the largest poetry festival in New England in terms of size and number of events and everything. And thankfully Dodge is in New Jersey. So but it's really the organization that started it, Mass Poetry, is really kind of a scrappy nonprofit based in Boston now. And part of their mission is to support Massachusetts poets, to build an audience for poetry, and to find opportunities to pay poets, and which is how the festival started. And for me, I kind of found the festival by accident when I was like a young poet, like writing alone in my room after work, and so the going to the festival really connected me to the poetry community for the first time. And so when it relaunched after a brief hiatus in 2021, and I was so honored to help bring it back. But it's really great. It's every other year now. So the next one will be in 2025. So I hope everybody will join us. It's usually first weekend of May in Salem. But yeah, in terms of starting something, I would say just go for it. And I think one of the most important things is to bring other people in. Like, I think the reason the poetry festival is so popular is because the bulk of the events are proposed by the community, and we get an amazing number of event proposals. And unfortunately, just for pure space limitations and money, because part of Mass Poetry's mission is to pay, we can only put on so many. But the people who are part of the community, we want as many people as possible to have a stake in that festival and be able to promote themselves and meet each other, right? So I'm kind of lucky enough to organize some of the main readings, but the festival is meant to really be a celebration of everybody. It's not meant to be, here's Mass Poetry's taste and idea of poetry, and these are for you. So, and you can trust the members of your community who love poetry to help bring it to life, right? You don't have to do everything, like everything on your own, I think. So I think that's one of the big things, is just go for it and bring people in with you and give them space to also do what they love. So
yeah, Mass Poetry takes place in Salem, Massachusetts, which I think is phenomenal. The whole North Shore region. There are readings in Rockport. There are readings in Lynn. Why do you think North Shore and Salem in particular is such a hotbed for poetry and poetry events?
you know, I think part of it is sort of the long literary history, and there is a lot of support from the city, a huge amount of support from the city of Salem. They're really invested in making the festival happen. And also, too, it is individual community members who have just spent a long time, I think, making sure that there are like places for people to go, right? Public groups for poetry, like the Salem Writers Group that's been meeting forever. And there are so many groups in Rockport and Gloucester, and of course, Dave Somerset isn't here, but he runs Walnut Street in Lynn. Of course, Dyer, right, which used to be in person. Of course, I know you're not the North Shore, but all of those efforts really add up to something big, right? Like, it seems like, any one person is only doing one little part, but it's everybody who benefits, you know. So there's not many places, I think, where you could go see poetry almost every night. Like, it's really amazing.
And do you think having the festival in the North Shore area just sort of becomes the cart leading the horse to a certain extent?
Yeah, it certainly helps, especially when the festival was every year. And I will say that you know, I'm from Salem myself, and when the festival was gone, I certainly missed it quite a bit. But I think one of the reasons why, because the festival started it started in Lowell, but I
Well,
think
you're in Lowell, yeah.
yeah, but I think one of the reasons why it found such a happy home in Salem was, in addition to the support from the city, um, it found a large group of people, of volunteers, um, to help run it. Just because, you know, mass poetry is a nonprofit life, it's difficult to fund a huge event like the festival, and so the volunteers are absolutely crucial to making it run. And there was a kind of already an infrastructure here to help.
Another question in the chat. If you get submit work, it gets rejected. Is it okay to ask the editor why it was rejected? And also so that way you might know how to correct and work on your craft.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't be, it can't hurt to ask. I wouldn't be insulted if they don't get back to you. Editors are getting so many requests from so many people that they may sometimes just not have time, especially at large journals. But I don't think anybody would be insulted by being asked, or at least not most people. So, and you know, some editors may be able to get back to you. So.
We've talked about everything else, but tell us about your new book and how it came about and what are some of the themes within it.
Yeah, well, so it's called Heart Up, and it's about, you know, I write a lot about money. I don't think I read any of those poems tonight, but um, I grew up poor, and for a long time, like, a lot of my life was about how do I make a living, right? Especially because I wanted to be a poet, um, you know, which is not a good career choice at all. But so anyway, so that theme comes up a lot in my work, and I'm just interested in that. And so but I resisted for a long time putting those poems together, even though I had a lot of them, because it's like, it seemed like too much, like too overbearing. But my friend January O'Neill encouraged me, and she said, "You put them together," and I did, and I sent them out to Lilly, and Eileen Cleary picked them up. So I'm so grateful. I'm really happy for it to come out. So.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for reading for us and being our guest. I mean, the website should be updated according to MP, but look at this website. It's beautiful. And I like the visual art gets larger and smaller. And there's a story here and services that I'd love to have a cover of your new book, but people are going to have to come and check it out. And you know, MP Carver, it was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. And thank you so much to everybody who came. I'm looking forward to the open mic.
All right, so we are having an open mic. If you're watching this on the stream on Facebook, use the link that's in that same group or in the event and come on in and read at the open mic. But if not, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.